It's my great pleasure to be with Bob Kerr today. Hello, Bob. How's things?
Yeah, very good. And yourself, Myrddyn?
I'm fine, thank you very much, Bob. And this is the continuing series of videos concerning Bob's attempt to complete the 7 summits. So that's the highest mountain on each of the 7 continents. And today's mountain we're going to be speaking about, Bob, that is?
Mount Vinson in Antarctica.
Now, of course, I believe this was the 6th of the 7.
Yeah, this was my 6th mountain in my attempt to do the 7 summits. The previous ones that I've done were Kilimanjaro in Africa, then Aconcagua in South America, then Mount Elbrus in Russia, which is the highest in Europe. I also did the highest point in Western Europe, Mont Blanc, in case there's any debate on those summits. 4th one I did was Carson's Pyramid in Papua, and closely followed by Kosciuszko in Australia, in case folk are debating those summits. 5th one was Denali, and the 6th one, the one we're talking about today, is Mount Vinson. And shortly I'll be going out to attempt Mount Everest to try to finish off my 7 summit series.
The big hill.
The big hill, as we all call it now. It's too scary otherwise.
So as far as Vinson was concerned, Bob, how long ago was that you went out?
I flew out to Vinson at the end of 2011, and that was sort of the summer season out in Antarctica, and the best time to go. So we were out there over Christmas 2011.
Well, before we start detailing the preparation and also going to the hill and also the ascent and descent, what may be quite good is to lay a little bit of background information about the mountain itself. So what's its height?
Yeah, the Vinson Massif, the highest point on it is 4,892 metres high, or 16,050 feet. Originally, when the Antarctica continent was discovered, they weren't sure exactly where the highest point was, and the highest point in Antarctica wasn't discovered until 1957 by aerial reconnaissance, and it was first climbed in December 1966 by an American-led team. So Everest had been long conquered before this had got a first ascent.
So as far as first ascent's concerned, it's still relatively recent, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still pretty recent, but it's quite understandable. It's quite hard to get to Antarctica. It's a wee bit chilly down there, and it's access is one of the big issues for getting to these parts of the world. So
where is Vinson positioned on the continent of Antarctica?
Yeah, if you look at a map of Antarctica, there's a peninsula that comes up from the South Pole towards the tip of Chile. So if you just sort of follow that inland, more or less along that peninsula, and at a point that's about 750 miles from the geographical South Pole, you'll more or less find that's where Vinson is.
So again, one of the great joys, Bob, of doing this series of videos is hearing about your exploits on these mountains. But I should imagine for you as well, it's experiencing what that certain continent has to offer, because some of them are very, very different to one another. And Vinson, again, vastly different to any other hill.
Yeah, it was a very different sort of hill experience. So the closest I'd had to that previously was going out to the Arctic and climb the highest point in the Arctic Circle. So I'd experienced cold before, but not quite on the extremes of Antarctica.
Now again, we'll document what happened on Vinson, but not wanting to give the game away, you mentioned the Arctic, and there's very few people, isn't there, that's been to the high point of both?
There's very few people that have been to the highest point of both the Arctic and the Antarctic, as far as I'm aware, it's only paid guides that have been to the summit of both the highest points in the Arctic and the Antarctic.
So that's a little bit of background information about the mountain. Now, as far as preparation was concerned, I should imagine by this stage, having done 5 out of the 7 before Vinson, you knew most of the gear you had to take out, and you knew how to pack, what was involved. Is that right?
Yeah, before going out to Antarctica, I pretty much knew what I needed for the trip. Pretty much had all of the equipment being tested out in Denali, And the big preparation issue for me was finance. It's really expensive to get down to Antarctica, and I hadn't really been planning to do Vinson in 2011, just because I thought that I can't get the finances together, maybe in 2012, maybe 2013. But when you get a phone call in August from Adventure Peak saying, Bob, with your experience, and we know you want to go to Antarctica, well, there's a space on a plane going down to Antarctica this Christmas, do you fancy coming? And, well, we're borrowing some money from all sources. Thanks, Bank of Mum and Dad again. I have paid that back, but I had to sell a flat to pay for the trip. But yeah, the hardest thing for Antarctica was finding the finances. It's certainly a big undertaking going to a place like Antarctica.
But again, that call from Adventure Peaks, was it?
Adventure Peaks in the Lake District.
That again is quite short notice, isn't it? To go out and get prepared for it.
Yeah, well, it's 4 months preparation. I mean, how long do you need when you've already done 5 of the 7?
And you went out with a small team, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a very small team of us went out from the UK. There was myself, there was Adventure Peaks guide called Chris Mothersdale, who lives up in northern England, and we were joined by an Irishman, Senan Foley, and an American called Ryan Lafna, and there was also a Slovakian doctor who came out to Antarctica with us, but was not feeling well, and he returned back to South America. So it was just 4 of us out in the mountain.
So the flight going out, where did that go from and where did you land?
To get out to Antarctica, first we had to get down to the southern tip of Chile in South America. So for myself, the journey started, I think it was from Aberdeen Airport, flew down to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, and then flew to San Diego in Chile, and then another flight down to Punta Arenas at the southern tip of Chile. And down at Punta Arenas we got safety briefings on Antarctica from the company who were sorting out the flight down to Antarctica, and we had to wait on a weather window in Antarctica before we could fly down there. The flight down from Punta Arenas to Antarctica, it's about 4.5 hours to the Union Glacier camp, which is set up next to a large expanse of blue ice. It's a blue ice runway. And so we flew out on a Kazakhstani Ilyushin 76 aircraft, which is basically a big cargo or troop carrier, and you fly for 4.5 hours to land with wheels on pure ice. And it's quite an interesting flight. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a crown prince of some state somewhere, whether you're the Queen or you're somebody like me who's really skint, you're all travelling cattle class in a cargo plane to get down there.
So once you've landed, and then was it a smaller plane going up to the base of the hill?
Yeah, once we landed in the Ilyushin, the sort of 50 of us who flew down in that Ilyushin aircraft, we got separated out into our sort of different groups, and we set up our tents to stay a night in Antarctica at the main Union Glacier camp, and then we had to wait for a weather window to then fly towards the Vinson Massif. It's about another 45 minutes to an hour's flight in a little Twin Otter aircraft, which lands on the glacier at the base of Mount Vinson. And
were you fortunate and had good views from the 2 plane journeys?
We didn't have good views from the Ilyushin aircraft because it's basically a cargo plane. There's essentially no windows and you can't see a thing. But I was fortunate enough to go forward to the bombing cone at the front where the navigator sits, and as we approached the Antarctica Peninsula, could see the Antarctic pack ice just sort of drifting below us, and that was quite nice to see very briefly before we then a little bit later touched down on a blue ice runway.
When you landed from the smaller plane, Bob, so you're now at the base of the hill,
yeah.
Would it be something like what Everest has now become, where it's almost like a permanent tented village there or not, or is it just each individual expedition, they're in charge, they set up their own tents when you arrive?
When we get to the base of Vinson, it's every team's looking after themselves, taking their own tents out there, and There's no permanent bases out at the mountain itself, but there are some logistic support during the time or the main season out there.
So what's base camp like underneath Vinson?
It's just you're camping on a glacier with some snow. It occasionally makes a little whoomphing noise in terms of that's the glacier moving a little bit. There's no facilities as such, but the views are absolutely awesome. 24 hours daylight in the summertime. You're just seeing the sun rotating around your head, and it never sets. It's just a pristine, amazing environment.
And other expeditions there at the same time?
Yeah, Mount Vinson's one of the most popular tourist destinations in Antarctica, so there was quite a number of other expeditions there. In the Aleutian aircraft that we flew in on, there was I think 4 or 5 other expeditions, and because we'd all arrived more or less at the same time, we more or less all went up the hill at the same time and all went down at the same time, give or take a couple of days. So the mountain was a lot busier than I was expecting, whereas when I was out in Greenland, it was just me and 3 friends, and we didn't see a soul pretty much.
And the elevation, Bob, that you'd be at base camp, what would that be about?
Base camp, where we flew into, is about 2,100 metres altitude, and Vinson itself being just short of 5,000 metres. It's still quite a bit of height gain to go.
So did you do any acclimatisation treks beforehand?
Once we arrived at Vinson Base Camp, initially we just sort of had a bit of a shake out of our gear, and we wandered up a nearby small peak. I don't even know if it was a P30 or a P40, but it got us up to about 2,800 metres altitude, which was higher than what our next camp would be further up the glacier. So it was a good opportunity just to shake out and refine our equipment a little bit, make sort of little things in Antarctica, like how accessible are your gloves? Are they at the top of your rucksack? Or where's the things that you really need? It was a really good shakeout in case later on we got exposed to more extreme weather conditions.
And talking about some of the gear that you'd need for the summit push, how much gear did you actually take out? How much weight?
There was a fair amount of weight. I probably took out about 40 kilos in my hold luggage, but I was also carrying equipment for adventure peaks, such as a couple of the ropes that we took out, and snow stakes and various odds and ends. But there was a lot of equipment we had to take out, including spare tents in case our tents got trashed out in Antarctica, because sometimes the winds can really pick up quite rapidly and tents can just get shredded out there, so you need contingency equipment as well. So
the route from base camp to the summit?
Yeah, the route from base camp to summit follows up the, I think it's the Bramshrund Glacier. My pronunciation's probably terrible, but you sort of go up the glaciers. I think it's about 10 kilometres up to an intermediate camp at a height of about 2,700 odd metres. Once you've pushed up to that height, it's then go up fixed ropes. It's 1,200 metres of fixed ropes up to the high camp, which is round about the sort of 3,800 metre mark, and then from the high camp you push on up to the summit. But in terms of getting camps established, we had to get kit carried up there, and for the moving from base camp to the intermediate camp, we did that in 2 stages, partly because of bad weather at the time. It was snowing quite heavily, which was unexpected for that time of the year. Normally Antarctica only gets maybe a few mils of snow a year. We had about 3 inches fall in the space of 24 hours, and so we were getting quite conscious of potential snow loadings on various slopes as well, in case it was accumulating somewhere. But initially we did a load carry halfway up to the intermediate camp, pulling sledges behind us, all being roped up because it's glaciated terrain. So carried some kit up, and then the following day we took the rest of the kit up, picked up the stuff that we dropped halfway up, and then continued up to intermediate camp. So we used sledges all the way up to intermediate camp, and to go from intermediate camp up to high camp, we had to just load all on our backs. There's no Sherpa support out there, it's your own hard craft to get you up these mountains. So we did one load carry up fixed lines. It's about, I think it's about 45-degree angle fixed lines with blue ice in various sections, rocks in other sections. It's just a good solid push up, about 900, 1,000 metres of ascent. And so it's 2 load carries up that, then camp up at the high camp and rest and wait for your summit push attempt.
So how many tents would be at high camp? Just you and the people that you were with, or other people up there as well at that same time?
At the same time, there was pretty much every other expedition that had flown out on the Aleutian aircraft with us were there at the same time. Some of the teams had pushed on a little bit quicker than ourselves, and others were a little bit behind, but overall majority of us were up at high camp. On Christmas Eve, the young lad Jordan Romero, 15-year-old, pushed for the summit of Vinson and actually finished his 7 summits attempt at age 15, so good on him.
That is incredible, isn't it? Age 15, just amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing sort of seeing this young lad coming down to high camp, and he was proud of himself, and so was his parents. It was nice to see. And
you were telling me before we started the interview, Bob, how old he was when he ascended Everest?
Yeah, he was age 13 when he ascended Everest by the North Ridge route.
Quite incredible, really.
Yeah, it is. Hat off to him.
So you mentioned Christmas Eve that he went up. Well, presumably was it the following day that you had your summit push?
Yeah, Christmas Day 2011, Christmas present to myself. Let's go get the highest point in Antarctica done.
So what was the weather like, and what time did you leave for the summit push?
Time doesn't have any meaning out in Antarctica. It's 24-hour daylight, and in terms of Chilean time, it was probably 7-8 o'clock in the morning. I don't really know, because it doesn't get dark, so it doesn't matter. In terms of the summit push, I think it was something like 6 hours that we pushed to get up there. It was we were going at a fairly quick pace because we were conscious of potential winds picking up, and we weren't sure the weather systems. The weather wasn't behaving as it normally does in that region because there'd been a front had moved across and deposited snow, and this wasn't normally seen at this time of year. So we were quite conscious of the weather, but pushed on up to the summit in about 6 hours, and the final hour we spent going along a ridge to get to the summit. And it's some of the best views I've ever had, making my way along this summit ridge towards the summit. But it was also exceptionally cold up there. My thermometer was off scale again, so minus 25 degrees centigrade, minus 30. Can't remember what that one goes down to now. But we also had winds blowing maybe 25, 30 mile per hour. That sort of order, and that gives you a significant wind chill. With wind chills maybe down minus 55, minus 60 degrees centigrade. I don't know because I didn't have any real measurement kit for that.
Those kind of temperatures, Bob, they're just amazing to hear about. Yeah, and at that elevation as well.
Yeah, it was exceptionally cold, and just to give you a feel for how cold it was, I had 3 layers of gloves on, a thin silk pair of gloves, normal sort of dexterous gloves, and I had big guiding gloves on as well, with chemical hand warmers inside to try to give me a little bit more heat. To take some summit photographs, I took my outermost layer of glove out. I took that off, so I still had 2 layers of gloves and chemical hand warmers, and in about half a minute my hands were frozen, really cold, really numb, could barely do anything with it. And it was just shocking how quickly you lose heat. You think you're still wearing gloves, still got a chemical hand warmer, but you're going numb, and a number of us were quite concerned. The most dangerous time for us potentially getting frostbite was taking photographs on the summit.
And as far as the summit is concerned, Bob, again, it's a question I've asked you once or twice before, but the elation that you must feel when you get there must be incredible.
Yeah, it was great reaching the summit of Vinson. In some ways it was also a big relief. I've spent all this money to come all this way. It'd be really disappointing to turn back 100 metres from the summit, but it was a lot of elation, but we weren't out of danger at that point, because the temperatures seemed to be dropping, and we thought time to get back down the mountain, back to the safety of our tents.
How long did you actually spend on the summit itself?
Probably no more than about 20 minutes, and all that time was taking photographs, getting our hands quite cold and trying to re-warm our hands. Also got quite cold on a bit of my face. When I look at the summit photographs now, I can see a little bit of exposed skin just underneath my goggles, and I also had my face mask had fallen slightly, and I'd had quite a bit of icing round my nose, and so I maybe got a little bit of frost in it, but that cleared up pretty quickly, thankfully.
So on the way down, did you rest at High Camp and spend the night there, or was it a push all the way down to the glacier?
We went back down to High Camp on Christmas Eve, rested, had our Christmas meal, which was some dehydrated curry or something like that, and then on Boxing Day we pushed all the way back down to base camp, so down to the intermediate camp, pick up the spare tents we'd left there, and any spare supplies we'd left there, and walked all the way back out to base camp. And one of the things with maintaining a pristine environment in Antarctica is you also take all your detritus back out with you. And I had the lovely job of carrying all the faeces for the group back down the fixed lines into my sledge, all the way back out to base camp. But thankfully it's frozen and it doesn't smell too much.
That's a lovely job, Bob.
Yeah.
What about getting back to base camp? And presumably the inward journey that you had getting there was then repeated to go back out?
Yeah, from the high camp back down, it was just down the fixed lines, and then just more or less following our tracks over the glaciated terrain. And then from the main Vinson base camp, it was just a case of wait on the Twin Otters being available to ferry us back to Union Glacier, to then wait for the Aleutian aircraft coming back into Antarctica. And
presumably when you got back onto mainland Chile, was it the customary beer to celebrate?
Well, you have to have a wee celebration, especially because we'd arrived just before Hogmanay started. I think we got back on the 30th of December back into Chile, and so we had a bit of a celebration on the 30th, and then a quieter affair on Hogmanay.
Well, again, Bob, it's been lovely to hear about your trip to Antarctica and going up Vinson. But before we close off, have you any further comments about Vinson?
If you're ever lucky enough to get out to Antarctica, just go for it. It's such a pristine, beautiful environment. I really enjoyed the environment. But one thing that really struck me when I was out there was that just 100 years ago, Scott and Amundsen and various others were making their polar crossings, trying to get to the South Pole. And for us it was really civilised out there. We could have some wine, could have some beer, could fly in and out quite easily. And I was even supporting clients using my satellite phone and blogging on Twitter to update people in progress. So communications have definitely changed, and I'm sure my family liked the fact that I was able to communicate with them from such a remote part of the world.
And of course, with Vinson done, that was 6 of the 7, wasn't it?
Yeah, 6 of 7 done.
One more left?
One more left, the big hill, Everest.
And that's coming up very soon, isn't it?
Yeah, that's coming up very soon. I'm looking at flying out the end of March 2013 to go and have a visit and hopefully get a fair crack, but more importantly come back safely.
Well, Bob, it's been a great joy again for me to listen about the detail concerning your trip to Vinson. So Bob Kerr, for now, many thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Myrddyn.